The scent of sizzling ribeye filled the air, rich and smoky, curling upward into the bright California sky as I adjusted the knobs on my brand new Weber. It was a perfect Memorial Day weekend afternoon. I was surrounded by family, tongs in one hand and a drink in the other, wearing a goofy Kiss the Cook apron, fully immersed in the joy of a backyard barbecue. That's when the sirens came, wailing, approaching fast. 2 police cars screeched to a halt right in front of our house on Maple Ridge Drive. My heart skipped. Officers stepped out and moved toward our gate, hands hovering near their belts like they were about to walk into a standoff. I stood frozen, confused, still gripping the tongs. Then came the voice, sharp, shrill, and all too familiar. Karen Whitmore. There she was, standing just beyond the fence in a blindingly white tennis outfit, pointing her manicured finger straight at me like I was some sort of criminal mastermind. According to her, my grill smoke was infringing on her rights and causing irreparable harm. Let me take you back. 6 months earlier, we'd moved into Willowbrook Estates. My wife Lisa, our 2 kids, and me. The neighborhood looked like a postcard. Clean streets, big yards, great schools, and that suburban calm every family hopes for. But no one warned us about the homeowners association, or more specifically, about Karen. Karen had been president of the HOA for nearly a decade. Her reign was notorious among longtime residents, but we were newcomers. We learned quickly. In just half a year, I'd already been issued 3 formal warnings. One for leaving the garbage bins at the curb a little too long. Another for a basketball hoop that stood, according to her measuring tape, 2 inches taller than allowed. The third, for letting dandelions bloom too long in our front yard. So when Memorial Day came, I knew we had to play it safe. I double-checked everything. No loud music. The speaker volume was well below the HOA decibel limit. I even used an app to be sure. Our guest list? Just my brother Mike, his wife and kids, a few friends from the block. 15 people, tops. Still, by the time I fired up the grill, I could see Karen watching through her blinds. By the time the burgers were sizzling, she was on her deck, watering the same flower bed she'd watered 3 times already, glaring like I'd set off fireworks. Then she invaded, stormed right through the little gate between our yards and into my backyard without so much as a knock or a greeting. Face flushed, nostrils flared, she announced in a booming voice that I was violating HOA Regulation 7.3.8, something about excessive smoke emissions. I tried to stay calm, told her this was a regular grill, standard stuff, nothing extreme. Just ribs, burgers, dogs. Legal and normal. She claimed the smoke was hazardous, that it was setting off her asthma. Curious, since I'd seen her power walking past my place earlier without so much as a wheeze. Then came threats. She waved her phone like a badge, said she documented everything, and I'd be fined $500. That's when my brother Mike, who works as a paralegal, stepped up and politely asked her to show us the bylaw. She hesitated, fumbled, scrolled through her phone, clearly not expecting pushback. Suddenly her argument changed. Now, the smell of cooking meat was offensive to her vegan lifestyle. The number of guests violated occupancy guidelines. The smoke was destroying her orchids. When none of that stuck, she shifted tactics entirely, clutched her chest, gasped dramatically, and declared I was violating her human rights. Then she pulled out her phone again. This time she wasn't bluffing. She called 911. We all stood there stunned, thinking surely she'd hang up, or the dispatcher would laugh her off. But within minutes, the squad cars arrived, and 2 officers walked into my yard like they were breaking up a riot. I tried to explain, still reeling from the absurdity of it all. 42 years old, a software engineer with not even a parking ticket to my name, now being questioned for hosting a family barbecue. Karen wasted no time unleashing her tirade. She claimed I was running an illegal food operation, that I was endangering public safety. She even described the smoke as chemical warfare. Chemical warfare from a backyard grill. The officers listened, visibly trying to suppress their disbelief. One of them looked at the tongs in my hand, the Kiss the Cook apron, the cooler full of Capri Suns. Eventually, Officer Chan turned to me and asked if I had a permit for an outdoor event. I said I didn't know I needed one for grilling burgers in my own yard. He nodded slowly, looked over at Karen, and said they'd take her statement. But it was clear they weren't buying it. They took down a report for the record, then told us we were free to continue, as long as the fire stayed controlled and we didn't block any roads. Karen stormed off in a huff, vowing to bring it up at the next HOA board meeting. As the officers left, Mike clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Well, at least the ribs are still hot." I went back to the grill, flipped the steaks, and tried to laugh it off. But in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't over. Not with Karen. The hiss of marinated ribeye kissing the searing grill filled the backyard with the unmistakable scent of summer. Smoke spiraled lazily into the clear California sky while I adjusted the dial on my new Weber, relishing the warmth of a laid-back Saturday. Then came the sirens. Fast, urgent, getting louder by the second. 2 police cruisers skidded to a halt out front on Maple Ridge Drive. Officers moved toward my backyard gate, hands hovering near their holsters. I froze, tongs in one hand, apron reading "Kiss the Cook," utterly dumbfounded. My offense? Hosting a simple family barbecue. That's when her voice sliced through the air, sharp, shrill, unmistakably hers. Karen Whitmore, HOA president. Nemesis in a tennis visor. She stood at her fence, pointing at me like I was some kind of backyard terrorist. According to her, my grill smoke was violating her constitutional rights and causing irreparable emotional damage. Let me rewind. It was Memorial Day weekend in Willowbrook Estates, a postcard-perfect slice of suburbia. We'd only moved in 6 months earlier. Lisa and I thought we'd found the dream. A spacious house, top-notch schools, tree-lined streets, and a backyard just begging for summer get-togethers. What we hadn't bargained for was the tyrant next door. Karen Whitmore had presided over the HOA for 8 years, treating the bylaws like commandments handed down from Mount Suburbia. She communicated mostly through passive-aggressive newsletters and rapid-fire warning letters. In just my first few months, I'd received 3. One for garbage cans left out 30 minutes too long. Another for a basketball hoop that apparently exceeded the height limit by 2 inches. And the third? Dandelions. Too many. Too long. Still, I'd kept my head down. Until this Saturday. We invited a small group, my brother Mike, his family, and a handful of neighbors, for a low-key afternoon of grilling, lawn games, and catching up. Just 15 people. Nothing rowdy. The grill was fired up by 2 p.m. and by 2:15, I spotted Karen's silhouette behind her kitchen blinds, peeking like a suburban hawk. By 3 o'clock, she was on her back deck, watering plants while glaring our way. The kids tossed bean bags, grown-ups sipped cold drinks, and soft classic rock played through the speakers. Everything within regulation, including the decibel level. I even double-checked using a phone app just to avoid drama. Didn't matter. Karen stormed into my yard without so much as a knock. Her face matched the tomatoes on the burger bar. She proclaimed, for all to hear, that I was in violation of HOA Rule 7.3.8, something about prohibited smoke emissions from outdoor cooking appliances. I explained calmly. It was a standard backyard grill, used appropriately. Legal, common, safe. She fired back, saying the smoke was triggering her asthma. Odd, since she'd been power walking past our home earlier without any visible struggle. She demanded I extinguish the grill. I respectfully declined. She upped the ante. Said she had time-stamped photo evidence and would be issuing a $500 fine. That's when my brother Mike, a paralegal with zero tolerance for nonsense, stepped in. He asked to see the bylaw she referenced. Karen hesitated, scrambling through her phone, clearly unprepared to be challenged. When that fell flat, she pivoted, claiming the meat smell was offensive to her vegan values. The party exceeded the allowable guest limit, and the smoke was threatening her precious orchids. None of it stuck. Cornered, she pulled her final move. Clutching her chest like she was starring in a soap opera, she announced that she was being attacked by toxic fumes and dialed 911. We thought it was theater. It wasn't. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars rolled up. Officers Chan and Rodriguez entered the backyard, scanning the scene with practiced eyes. They looked more prepared for a standoff than a cookout. I stepped forward, setting down my spatula and trying to make sense of what was happening. Me, 42 years old, clean record, software developer, now potentially facing legal trouble for grilling some burgers. Karen didn't miss a beat. She unleashed a dramatic rant about unlicensed food operations, public health risks, and her trampled civil rights. She actually called the smoke chemical warfare. The officers exchanged glances. Officer Rodriguez turned to me, then back to Karen, and finally said, "Ma'am, this appears to be a family barbecue." Karen protested again, threatening lawsuits, citing fictitious ordinances, and waving her phone around like a badge of power. After some patient back and forth and a lot of eye-rolling from my guests, the officers finally asked Karen to return to her property. She did, reluctantly, seething, mumbling something about escalating this to the HOA board and consulting her attorney. The rest of the day went on, smoke and all, and let me tell you, those burgers had never tasted so good.